Hi guys, welcome to the podcast. Before we start, we just want to introduce you to our sponsor. Our sponsor is the Twitter handle @MugsNFL. They're a company that offer a range of custom items such as mugs, t-shirts, crewneck jumpers, and hoodies, all customized with your favorite sports player or your sports team. That can be any sport, ranging from the NFL through to the NBA to UK sports. All you have to do for an extra 10% off your order is drop them a message on Twitter quoting our podcast, that is the Hardwood Hoops podcast, and they'll get 10% off your next order. Cheers and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to the Hardwood Hoops podcast. I'm joined as always by Ben Jones, I've got to say this time, because someone asked me why I just say Ben.
Formal. Hello, everybody.
How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, all good, thank you, mate. We had some good feedback as well. Last week was our best ever listen, so big thanks to Rich again for coming on the podcast, because I know obviously he drew some of those listeners, so thanks to Rich.
Great guest. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? And I think he's invited us on to a couple of their lives they're going to do on Instagram in the following weeks. So everyone watch out to see us on Instagram with Rich soon.
Get to see our pretty faces.
And then hear you talk about the wonderful Cavaliers.
Oh, yes, that fantastic franchise.
Everyone's going to love that episode.
Yeah, right. Moving on.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, right. So we're going to start this podcast. We're going to do the news. We're going to start with the news as we kind of always do, at least while there's no games. We're going to start with this. I think maybe when games come back, especially for this season, because they're going to be so frantic, we can end up doing double pods for the week and maybe not have like a news section as such, because obviously a lot of the news is going to be games, which we're going to review every week.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go on today to talk about the schedule review. And then a little bit of cool breaking news from ourselves. We're doing a double pod week this week, Ben. Twice in 1 week, everyone gets to listen.
Woo! Lucky listeners, eh?
Yeah, we're going to go for a cheeky special topic on Friday, we think, about a top 10 player draft. Me versus Ben, in terms of our opinions, and we're just going to discuss each player, so that should be fun. But in terms of today, let's start with the news. We had a bit of breaking news, Ben, just before we came on. Don't know if you've seen this. From Woj, J.R. Smith, well, Woj and ESPN. J.R. Smith set to sign with the Lakers officially. Today or tomorrow, I think they're just finalising the deal. Probably financially, if I'm honest, or maybe some insurance stuff on there. We kind of talked about it last week, but now it's actually confirmed, and that's their final roster spot filled. Have you just got any overall thoughts on more of adding him to the roster and maybe what they'll benefit from with him on the team?
I think although I think Caldwell Pope's going to step into the majority of the minutes Avery's going to leave. JR will literally be sort of plug in and play, stand on the wings, hit some bombs, and hopefully play some defense. After last episode talking about him potentially joining the Lakers, spoken to a few people who feel he might be a detriment to the team in terms of off-court drama or attitude, or which JR is going to turn up on the court. Is he going to go partying with Riri? Who knows? But I think for the limited minutes he's going to play, he is going to fulfill his role. And I mean, he must be doing something right. LeBron likes him on a team. You know, what more could you want? Sort of potentially the greatest player in the world wants you on his team season in, season out. It's great praise. So hopefully he'll do well, and it'll be a bit of a resurgence for him. That's all we can hope for, and a bit of entertainment for us at least.
Yeah, definitely. I think I could, if he starts well, if I'm honest, I could see him and Caruso taking more of Avery's minutes. But like you said, Caldwell Pope is almost like the safety blanket in terms of knows the system. Obviously, been fit all season. LeBron trusts him as well. And then if JR doesn't work out, I think we could see Caldwell Pope take huge minutes. But if JR hits some threes early on, you never know. Bit of a flamethrower as JR could work out well for them. I think it will improve offensive options. and it probably won't matter defensively that much till later on in the rounds. I think, like we said last week, I think when it gets to later on and there's more guards to guard, that's when it could struggle, especially when you've not played basketball for the whole season in terms of foot speed, fitness, concentration, which is JR can be his problem. So, and part two, you said LeBron James, best player in the world potentially. You'll find out on Friday who the best player in the world is in the double draft.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cliffhanger. Next piece of news. We had some test results last week, but our first podcast since the results, which was the league-wide coronavirus testing program. And it was around 5% total of league players that are invited to Orlando that were positive with the virus, which obviously isn't good because anything above 0 isn't good for people's health, I suppose. But the slight positive is it is better rate of infection than Orlando itself. That's higher than 5%. And the nation is about 4.5%, 5% as well. So it is in line with what America are doing in total, which is good news because obviously if it was higher, like 15, 20%, then it could really jeopardize the league because there's actually a problem league-wide then in terms of already starting, whereas now they're at the national level. So if you get them in a bubble environment, that should go down. However, just a little comparison to football. In Germany, it was a 0.2% test rate the 2 weeks before they started, which I know we've got a long way to go, but that was when they first did their wide tests. In England, in Leeds United's league, it was 0.4% of players who were due to play had the virus a month before. That was their first day, and that was tested in nearly 2,000 players. So it's a lot bigger sample size because I think the NBA was 360. So a slight worry in compared to the sports that we know have come back, but we know that parts of America are on the up, don't we? And obviously America's a much bigger place, so higher risk of infection.
Yeah, it's 16 of 302 players, isn't it? And I mean, they've done it, when was that test? Sort of 4, 5 weeks out from the first game. So this is
I think it's 5 weeks to the day nearly, I think.
Yeah. So this is the first sort of marker where they can go, okay, these guys have tested positive. You've got over a month to get yourself sorted, and the rest of you just carry on doing what you're doing. Don't put yourselves in any risky situations. Keep it to a minimum. And then once they all get to Orlando, providing they all go in with a negative test, you would assume, with everything in place, that should remain negative throughout the 3 months. There should be a minimal amount of risk whilst in that bubble. I mean, we've spoken about it briefly before on previous episodes. The only thing I am super worried about is Disney, which may have changed after recent findings coming out, still wanting paying customers in at the same time as all these athletes being in there. For me, that just needs to be a blanket no. Just give it the 3 months, then have your paying customers back. It's too much risk, people coming in and out with that going on. But, testament to the other sports there, 0.4% of things across that many is incredible. And I don't see why the NBA can't fall in line with that. I know they're in line with their national average, but they can definitely fall in line.
Yeah, definitely. I think one key part of that will be how early these tests are. They're a lot earlier than some of the other sports did in terms of how many weeks out from the first game they are, which means more time to test. But actually, obviously, as long as people haven't got underlying health issues, more time for people to get the virus, because the more of the 300 odd people that get it before the bubble, we don't know 1,000,000%. There's been different findings, but a lot of medical people have come out and obviously said that most people can't get this virus twice, and you do build up antibodies. So in that sense, if 5% of the league's already got it and it stays around 5% for a couple of weeks, obviously that will build up people's immunity, and then you could see that percent drop in line as we go into Orlando. And like you said, as long as they can control people coming in and out, people leaving, families or whatever at different times, and just be really strict with their testing and almost get a little bit lucky with things like false negatives. And obviously the people that get it, strip them straight out efficiently, and retest everyone again, saliva or non-saliva tests. I think they could see that percent go down, which is obviously what we all want for basketball, but for their health more importantly.
Yeah, definitely. And they've got these procedures in place. And what they've also got is, from what you're talking about with football in our country, or soccer, or whatever you want to call it, there's plenty of other sports out there, nationwide sports that are successful at the moment. They're playing at the highest level. They're even traveling around to play these games and successfully doing this without contracting the virus or any illnesses. Like the NRL over in New Zealand started back up a couple of weeks ago, and they've been going great guns. The Premier League's up and running. They're not just doing Premier League; they're doing FA Cup as well, aren't they? Like it's almost like they're going back to normal, but they've got things in place to stop this virus affecting the games that the public want to see. So the NBA needs to sort of reach out and talk to people and have a look at what they're doing, what's making it a success, and draw from that and try and implement that in the next coming weeks to push them on forward and make it a success.
Yeah, even things like extra temperature testing, things that other leagues are doing, even though that's proved to be like 70% accurate because a lot of people are asymptomatic. If you just do that alongside your current testing program, like they're now doing in the Premier League and the Championship and in Spain for football or soccer, then that gives you just more of a chance. Like, we're not saying replace the 90% accuracy test or the 88% saliva test, but if you just add more and more tests, more and more options, more and more screenings, it's just less likely that one person gets it, but a lot more likely that one turns into 10, which turns into 50, which turns into 100. Yeah. I think that's something that football has done well. In the first week of games now, we only had 9 people out of 1,100 that actually missed a game because they tested positive so close to the game. And again, that was like 0.35%. So it's about what you want. And obviously, this is very different in football because there's no bubble, but also it's a shorter time span. They're trying to get games done in 4 or 5 weeks. With the way the NBA are doing it, as time goes by, the chance of getting the virus is just going to get less and less because some people will have the virus, some people have antibodies, and just the rate of infection will just continue to drop as people don't get the virus. So I think that's going to help them in terms of the time frame they're there. We said before it's not ideal for people to be locked up for that long or be there for that long without families and etc. But in terms of the actual virus, the length of time will help them, we think, as long as Florida doesn't get worse and worse, which is something maybe we're going to go on to talk about now.
Yeah, I was going to say that leads into our next bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just found a good article. Well, it's not a good article, but well-written article about a bad thing in terms of Florida and Texas, which obviously Orlando covers that Florida area. They're reversing the reopening, so they're not calling it a lockdown as such like we are, but they're reversing the reopening of certain things. Such as shops, such certain rules like meeting up with friends, meeting up with families, outdoor events, stuff like that. They're actually still reviewing it, but they have blanket said they're reversing the reopening on a lot of the things because I think total US cases have gone past 2.5 million, which obviously is a big place, but there's something like 14% of that 2.5 million came in the last 10 days across the country, and then 25% came in the first 10 days when everyone was so shocked about New York when that got shut down. Florida and Texas are actually almost reverting to that, which is not good for everyone there, mainly, if we're honest. But you'd think it would be bad for the NBA, but we have had Adam Silver come out and say that they're all guns ahead and they're so confident in their plan that even if it gets worse in Florida, they think they can just go ahead because of the bubble environment, which might be true. And it could actually be more true if Disney just gets shut completely, like you said, for the whole time, and there's only the NBA there. If that happens, that actually could help them, which is crazy to say.
Yeah, I just think that's the way it needs to be. They need to get the Disney staff on board, get no paying customers. The hotels are there for Disney staff, NBA personnel, NBA players, and anybody involved with that environment. You have your 3 months. They all work together, stay in these hotels, provide for each other, and keep the coming and going to an absolute minimum, which can be delivery of food and goods, topping up on those kind of things. But after that, I know they've, in that big booklet they released, they say, oh, yeah, have comedians in and music acts and all this kind of stuff. And you think, well, potentially that could work, but if you really want this to be a success and you don't want to risk people's health, maybe those are the kind of things they're going to need to go without and find new ways to occupy themselves. Whether, I don't know, there's going to be plenty of players there and people there that they haven't seen for a long time, and we know that there's things in place where they can start talking to people, and this is where they need to use that time instead of being distracted maybe by, I know they've got a lot of pressure on them with the championship ahead of them, but they can use this time to focus on the things they want to push, like working with Black Lives Matter, or LeBron's got his new initiative about getting everybody out and voting. These are the kind of things where they can network with the other players and get together and push the issues that really matter at the moment, rather than perhaps taking a risk on getting music act in for 4 hours one evening. But we'll wait and see. I'm convinced it's going to go ahead and it'll be a success.
Yeah, I'm convinced it will go ahead, even if Florida gets worse, to be honest. I just think they're just going to go for it. And if somehow it does get into the camp and a lot of people get it, then it might get cancelled. But I think it will go ahead initially.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, I'm probably 95% sure it will complete, to be honest, because I just think their plan is very detailed. And even the stuff that we maybe haven't read about or don't know about, because we're not privy to that information, the stuff behind the scenes, the extra checks, the amount of staff they're going to have cleaning, stuff like that, stuff we can't even know about. I think it's just going to all help to it being done successfully. Yeah, and like you said, they've also said on that memo that players can watch, obviously, the other games, which is another big time passer, isn't it? Because you all love the NBA and you want to get maybe advantage on your rivals and watch their games, and you can watch them live. And if you're not playing that day, you can watch 4 or 5 games on the spin. Like, so there's going to be things for them to do without inviting more people in, like you said. Yeah, and on that note as well, actually, you mentioned there about focusing on other things rather than just basketball. We heard this week, well, late last week, that NBA players in Orlando are going to be allowed to change the name on the back of their jersey for social cause reasons. I think this was an issue before it was agreed, just for sponsorship reasons. They have a lot of money coming in just from the sponsors on the front of the shirt, the sponsor of the NBA, for seeing the players' names on the back with their logos on the front. So they obviously have to do some deals there, but that's all been agreed, which is good. The NFLPA are really happy with that. Strangely, though, we've already seen an example of someone choosing to put something on their jersey, which people don't like, which I just think is crazy, because the whole idea of this is free speech. And we've had Dinwiddie from the Nets come out. I don't know if you've seen this, but he's chosen he might put the phrase trillion on the top of his jersey because he wears number 26, I believe. And 26 trillion is the amount the US is in debt, worldwide debt, in terms of in the nation. And he's putting that on there to say, hey, look, there's a lot of people in debt in this country. Most of them are African American in terms of percentage terms. So I'm going to wear that to try and raise awareness for causes that help people get out of debt and stop people getting in debt and stop banks offering so much debt. And he's already had a lot of people come out and say, oh, that's nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. That's not going to help anyone. So hang on, that's exactly why they're doing this. They're doing this. They can choose their own causes that they think and their personal experiences benefit from. It just shocks me that people can even criticize what they want to put on the back of their jersey.
That's baffling to me as well. I understand in terms of making sure the logo's there and the sponsorship gets their space and blah blah blah, but if that all fits in, why can't you put the name of the charity you want to look out for or the organization you want to look out for around that? It's
exactly, no matter what it is.
Yeah, it's the player's jersey, and if that's something they want to bring awareness to, then why not? And like I said, it then feeds into giving them things to talk about before and after the game and push these social causes. And I've got no issue with it whatsoever. It's their jersey. Why not?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I would never have necessarily looked at total American population debt as individuals and seen it was 26 trillion and think, God, that's a lot more than China, the UK, Europe combined, and think, why might that be? I would never even think about that, but I've literally, because I'm an NBA fan, I've read a story about Dinwiddie, seen his Twitter, and seen loads of things that I'd never known. That's literally the exact purpose of doing this, is to raise awareness for people that don't know. And that's just one cause. Like you said, there's going to be 300 plus players, especially if people get the virus. Could be up to 350 in replacement players. That they will have whatever cause they want. And if I'm honest, some of them will probably get together and match some, and some will try and not repeat, just to try and spread knowledge and awareness. And I think, why not? I think it's a perfect idea.
such a good window and such a good platform to kick on any sort of kick forward with anything you want to raise awareness for and bring justice to. And, within reason, obviously, if it's a good cause, 100% go for it. And not only that, it gives, with limited going on for broadcasters and things like that, it's going to give them something to talk about as well while the game's going on. If you get to like a particularly slow game, that's something else that they can bring to the forefront and say, oh, he's wearing this on his jersey because of X, Y, Z. And
like blowouts as well. That happened a lot. If someone's getting blown out by 30, it's something to discuss.
That's it, and it's just going to snowball from there, and good things will come of it. I'm sure of that, definitely.
Yeah, we saw the same in the Premier League over here, just with players wearing Black Lives Matter instead of their own name on the shirt. And obviously, everyone kind of knows about the movement because of what's happened. But when you actually hear people talk about it, and it's just a constant reminder, and hear players almost say, one of the reasons I'm doing it is to say that like my fame or our team or this sport isn't the main focus right now. The focus is actually the movement of Black Lives Matter, and I think that's exactly what the NBA is going to go for as well.
Yeah, I think it's great. We had some controversial things happen a couple of years ago. I can't remember if it's football or rugby, but they weren't allowed to wear poppies. Do you remember that?
So yeah, it's football.
Yeah.
So we wear poppies around Remembrance Day and stuff in the league, but the date fell on an international weekend, and England were not allowed to wear poppies because obviously it's a war-based story, and obviously other people from other countries died in the war. So the actual overall FIFA wouldn't let England themselves wear poppies because of who they were playing and who else was playing that night. I can't remember the exact nation, but yeah, you're right. That's exactly what happened, which is crazy.
They did it anyway and just took the fine, didn't they?
Yeah, they weren't going to do it, and then the players wanted to do it, similar to NBA actually, in terms of the player voicing their opinions. And they took the first fine, and then I believe it was going to happen again, and they decided to wear the same shirts again to the second fine as well. So yeah, we have seen crazy stuff like that before, and that might happen in the NBA if there's rules on what you can and can't wording you can't put on the back. Like you could see a player maybe just put what they want on the back in terms of certain words that maybe they might not want, but we're going to have to see that when it comes to fruition.
Do you think this could lead into potentially something similar like the Big Three or something they trialed a couple of seasons ago where players can have like their nickname on the back instead of their surname?
Probably not. No, probably not. I'd say they'll do it for this, and I think next season it could be back to normal. You can put like, I believe when I was looking at this, you can put your middle name or just say, I don't know. In football, Leeds have got a player called Tyler Roberts. He puts T Roberts rather than just Roberts. Apparently, you could do that. So you could put L Doncic if you really wanted to for Luka. But yeah, you could do, but you have to obviously be consistent with it because of jersey sales and sponsorship.
Sure.
But I can't see them letting that. I can't see them letting that change too much, especially as the collective bargaining agreement is obviously already in place currently, and if it's not in there, you'd have to get obviously the league's permission. And I just think the more important things for the players to try and talk about rather than that.
Definitely,
because they're trying to talk about not sponsorship, sorry, donations and league causes now, aren't they? Before they get to Orlando, just to know what the plans are, rather than just jersey names and stuff on the back. They're trying to work out a more detailed plan about how they're going to raise awareness, raise funds,
something that will
justice. So that's good.
Work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're trying to do that before they get there. So when they get there, people can focus on the basketball to a point, and they can actually almost have the stress of trying to help people off them. They want to agree it before they go, because then obviously then the players, because it's all they want to do, all the players will then be in a comfortable position to say, all right, we're doing all we can, so we feel comfortable to play. We're not just playing for money. We're not just playing for white owners or white people to watch on TV. We're playing because we want to play. We're playing to help each other, help our families, help other people. I think that's quite key. They're trying to do that before they go, and this is the first step really with the names.
Yeah, nice.
We have got another bit of breaking news. I'm going to leave that to last because I haven't told you what that is, and it's going to be funny. But before we get to that, we've heard this week on the Wing It pod that Vince Carter is retiring. What are your thoughts on him obviously retiring finally? but his career maybe in general, Ben.
What a baller move, retiring on your own podcast. Only Vince Carter could do something like that, couldn't he? But
Yeah.
well, it spans over, cheekily just sneaking into 4 decades there. You can't fault it, really. The amount of teams he's gone to and tried to get over that edge and win a championship, he's a phenomenal player. And I kind of hoped he'd go back to the Raptors and do his final season there, just as a little bookend. But you can't. Yeah, he's an incredible player and seems to be an incredible individual as well. I'm sure whatever he goes on to next, he will probably dominate that and do extremely well. What about you?
Well, yeah, finishing on what you said there, I think his podcast is really good. So I could see media commentary sort of being a way that he goes. It's hard nowadays because players have earned so much money. A lot of them don't want to go into coaching, but he's been an ideal mentor for younger players if he was a coach. But yeah, in terms of him as a basketball player and as a person, it was crazy. I can't remember. I should have wrote it down, but there was a crazy stat that obviously he was a key player in the league for so long, but he's been a bench player for like 9 years.
Wow.
Like that's crazy to think that like even early 30s when you've got like LeBron early 30s being like best player in the league or whatever, Melo like obviously just coming off the bench in like the last year, like Wade was a starter all the way through, Paul's still starter, and like even though he's had an amazing career and like actually when he's off the bench it's like 38 plus, he's been incredible. I just found it shocking that he was coming off the bench so early. Like what a great player he was.
Yeah, and but you don't usually find that as well for someone so willing to say, okay, yeah, I'll come off the bench, and he's still got his minutes, he's still got his shots, but to say, okay, yeah, I'll do it from the bench. You don't sort of once in a blue moon, really. There's been a couple, Lou Williams, obviously. There's not many out there that are willing to say I come off the bench for some reason, even though they're getting more playing time than the starter.
Yeah, I think that sums him up as a team player, to be honest.
Definitely. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit as well, just off the top of your head. Memorable dunk. Which one do you think takes the cake? Takes top of the. Well, yeah, which is the best dunk?
Top of the cake. I'm not sure. I wrote down here that obviously one of his career-defining moments is that whole dunk contest that he won. That was one of the best. The first one, one of the best that he competed in that I've ever seen. So that was almost every dunk there. But as a basketball fan, really, I've seen him play against the Knicks at MSG, and he dunked over. Might have been Tyson Chandler, I think.
Nice.
It was quite a few years ago, and just being there, because that's the only time I've ever seen him play live. That was almost the most memorable for me because when from our country, when do you get to see someone like Vince Carter or LeBron James dunk, which is I saw both of them in the same week. So like that's a cool moment for me. What about you?
Who was Vince playing for at that point?
I can't remember because we saw 3 games in a week, and that's what I was literally just trying to think of that.
It's all a blur.
Yeah, it was before the Hawks. So I'm trying to think of who he played for before the Hawks.
Where was LeBron? He was in Miami at this point, I take it.
Yeah, he was in Miami, yeah.
So the Mavericks, maybe?
I believe that was his last season, I think, in Miami. LeBron. He might have been with the I'll tell you who it was with. It was his first season with the Grizzlies.
Okay.
I remember, yeah, because I remember that the person we were sat next to had this crazy Grizzlies hoodie on with like an actual grizzly bear like on the back. It was absolutely nuts. But he was quite a nice guy. I remember chatting to him. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the Grizzlies, which was quite cool. But yeah, in terms of other stuff with Vince, I also wrote down something that you almost forget about because it's so long ago. Like, what a shame, even though I never really liked the Nets, what a shame that him and Jason Kidd on that team never won a title with the Nets because they were just nuts together, those two.
Yeah. When you look at the stats in terms of point guards as well, Jason Kidd is right up there. He's sort of top top 2, top 3 all-time assists, is he? He's incredible, and to have someone as like Vince Carter on that team as well. In fact, the dunk I've got as his best dunk was from when he was on the net, 05-06. The ball comes off a missed shot and just sort of bounces out to him on 3-point line, and he just casually takes it, puts it behind his back, drives in, and just smashes it down, I think, on Alonzo Mourning, who is a big boy, and he's known for blocking shots. That dunk is incredible. If you watch it back, it's just phenomenal. What an athlete.
I remember seeing him do one on League Pass this earlier this season for the Hawks. Can't remember who it was against, but he'd only come on for like 3 minutes, I believe, in the second quarter, and he dunked over someone. Obviously, at his age, like, it was nuts to see him do that, and he almost did it with ease. It proves his hops. It's cool.
Ridiculous.
But yeah, we wish him best, I guess, and whatever he does next, we'll be watching.
Yeah, 100%. We're keeping tabs on him.
And in terms of the last bit of breaking news that Ben doesn't know about, the Cavs, they've made a huge signing, Ben. It's going to turn them around.
Yeah.
They've agreed a multi-year deal. It's a 2-year deal. I think he's played for them this season as well. With Jordan Bell, NBA champion Jordan Bell.
Ooh, game
there we go.
Changer.
Rebounds, rim running for days. Is that going to be the piece that puts them over the edge for the Eastern Conference next year?
Yeah, definitely put them over the edge or something. I don't know. It's a bit of a mess of a roster, but I'm sure we'll get into that at another point.
Yeah, I think we're going to do a Delete 8, as they're called, aren't they? The 8 teams that aren't going to Orlando in a couple of weeks. We're going to do a whole podcast based around them, I think. That's the plan.
Yeah.
We'll get to hear you discuss the Cavs.
Definitely. And I'm sure everybody will be as confused as I am about them. But yes, save that for then.
Cool. Right, that's all we've got then in terms of news items. We're going to move on to our topic for today, which is just a schedule review. So Ben set out some questions or guidelines, really, and sent them over to me of what we want to talk about. So we're going to go through each one. So Ben, let's start with what games do you want to see the most from this schedule?
So I've got 2 potential games down here, both of which involve the Memphis Grizzlies. So my first one is Memphis versus New Orleans. That big game that could determine that 8th and 9th spot, solidifying it, and could sort of be a prelim to if we have that playoff, whatever you want to call it, to get that 8th spot. The only issue Memphis may have is it's the second game of a back-to-back, but the game before is the Spurs, and without LaMarcus Aldridge, I don't see it being too much of an issue. For me, when I put the rosters side by side, I feel like the Pelicans could have some more firepower, and it's potentially slightly deeper, in my opinion. But the way Memphis play is just electric, and I love watching it. And to see, obviously, Morant go against Zion is what we've wanted to see more and more and more of all season. But obviously, haven't been able to because Zion's been injured. And just to see if Zion can pull any votes back, really, in terms of Rookie of the Year. He's not going to get it. I don't think he should get it. I think it should be Ja all the way. But I
hope he doesn't get it. I've got a large bet on Ja Morant to get it. So I'm praying that he doesn't get it.
That's my first must-see game. That one's on Monday, on the 3rd of July. It's
August.
August, 6:30 Eastern on ESPN. I'll get to my second game in a minute. Give us one of yours.
That's a national televised game as well, which is cool. Yeah. So people who haven't got League Pass but have got Sky or whatever, in terms of UK fans, will be able to see that one. Even though I do honestly recommend getting League Pass, even if you just get the short version they're going to release. I believe they're going to release a special version just for Orlando, and I do recommend anyone to get that because we've missed basketball, so why not make the most of it? In terms of games, but going back to what you just quickly said, the Ringer have run an analytics program based on the playoffs, and they've got the 8 seed being 87% likely to be the Grizzlies,
Mm-hmm.
And the 9th seed to be 30, which is the highest for the 9th seed, 34% to be the Pelicans. So Grizzly Pelicans is looking like the game you've chosen is looking like the warm up almost for the play-in game in terms of probability, which is quite cool. But also, there's a chance the Grizzlies could pull away. If they get 5 games difference, they don't have to play anyone in the play, and that's what they're going to be aiming for, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that is where they're going to put the marker down if they're going to put it anywhere. That game is pivotal. Pivotal.
It is also pivotal. So I've got 2. Well, I've got more than 2, if I'm honest, but we tried to not go on for an hour and 45 minutes. So the 2 I've got written down is, one's biased and it's quite fun for the podcast. It's Mavs v Houston. Obviously everyone knows I'm a Doncic fan. I'm a Mavs fan now, so that's big for me. B, me and Ben both hate the Rockets, so I want to see that. But in terms of the NBA, the Mavs really, really, really want to move up in terms of seeding. Houston, same, but they don't want to drop in seeding. You don't want to go 6, 7. Obviously, not going to go 8, but you don't want to go 6 or 7. So that's a massive game just in terms of A, playoff seeding, but B, in terms of just a game that I want to see for more of a bias reason. And a non-bias, obviously the first night, Clippers-Lakers, I believe, is the second game on. That's a 9 p.m. tip their time. So I think that's 1 a.m. over here, I think. That's a TNT game on the doubleheader. So I think Clippers-Lakers I want to see because it's the first night. Obviously, it's the second and best team, or one of the 2 top 3 teams if you include the Bucks. And I just think after such a long wait, Jazz Pelicans is going to be fun beforehand, but obviously everyone's going to be waiting for that Clippers Lakers game. So they're the 2 games for me. What are your thoughts on those 2 games, and what's the second game of yours on your list?
I'm so excited for Lakers, Clippers. Obviously, like you said, Utah and New Orleans before that. I'm just a little bit worried that it's going to look real rusty, and there's going to be a lot of shots going up that don't go in, and
JR shots.
Yeah, potentially as well. Missed dunks, missed layups, terrible defense. I'm a little bit worried. However, basketball's back. Who cares? As long as I'm watching it, that is great.
You can see LeBron James as well.
Exactly. Aren't Dallas and Houston are the same group as well for their area, aren't they? Oh my god, words.
What do you mean? Sorry.
They're the same division, aren't they? As well.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. And that's also a national televised game as well. I forgot to say that's the 9 p.m. slot the day after. So on the Thursday, we're going to get Clippers Lakers as the marquee game, and then on the Friday we're going to get Celtics Bucks, and then Rockets Mavs back to back. So the first 2 nights of basketball is absolutely insane.
Yeah, they've kicked it off with a bang, haven't they? Definitely.
Doncic v Harden. Doncic's going to score 40 and Harden's going to foul out. That's the dream.
Wow. What a call that is.
What's your second game then?
My second game, on your list. Memphis-Portland, which is on Thursday.
I wouldn't be picking that game.
I think that is going to be it's going to be their first game for both teams. And again, I think it's where they put a marker down. Portland are going to be coming in having lost Trevor Ariza, having gained Nurkic, and be playing with their lineups and trying to figure out what lineup works best for the team. I think they go Lillard, CJ, Melo at the 3, and then potentially.
I'm excited for that.
Whiteside and Zach Collins at the power forward and have Nurkic off the bench. But
I don't think they'll start Whiteside over Nurkic, will they?
Yeah. Well, I don't think they will long term. I just think in terms of
easing back in.
Yeah, easing back in. I think they'll go with that. And Memphis, obviously trying to fend them off, need to get a strong start, keep Portland out of the race, keep them down there, because they're tough competition. There's no doubt in that. And if they have to face them in that playoff spot, it's going to be tough trying to get a win over Damian Lillard, who, as we discussed last week, is a dog when it comes to the playoffs and will not give up without a fight. So I think a little bit under the radar, but I think that is going to be a huge game. That one is NBA TV.
Okay, cool. I think, I think they're probably the hardest team that Memphis would like to not play in the seed game. So it'd be quite interesting to see them go at each other first. Because, like you said, I think star power wise, they've had a hard year. But if you look at actual top end talent, maybe not full roster, but if you look at top end talent, so your first 7, 8, 9 names on the team, they're by far the hardest when you get past Dallas from 7, including Memphis. For me, they're the strongest star power team. And in a seeding game, if you only have to lose 2 games, that's literally what it's going to be, isn't it? It's going to be a shootout, and they got the guns to win.
Yeah, I'd be worried. And like I said, that's where you put your markers down, get it in early, get the wins under your belt, and kick on from there. So those were my 2 big games. Have you got any others you want to mention quickly?
No, just going to mention I can't wait to see Melo start at the 3 or 4, and he's going to drain some threes, and I'm going to go nuts a ridiculous hour in my living room. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Well, I'll quickly ask you then, because for me personally, I prefer Melo at the 4, but where would you have him if he was in your lineup?
Well, he's a 4. He's better at the Knicks as a 4, but he didn't want to play 4. That's when him and the franchise fell out. He struggles to guard threes, and he spends so much energy guarding threes that it makes his offense worse. So he can bang with a 4 on the defensive end, but also his shooting, which is very, very good for a 4, or has been in the past. He's a high percentage shooter and a clutch player to shoot at that position. So I think pick and pop, screen and rolls and stuff from the 4 is where he should be. But he could convince him to play him at the 3, and he'll probably start at the 3 just because he's Carmelo Anthony, and that's the story of his career, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I prefer him going ISO against a 4. I think his handles are going to be better than the majority of power forwards you've got out there.
Yeah, he could run their bench unit quite well with Nurkic or Whiteside on and off, and let the 2 guards take some time off. He could score so well on a 4, especially if he's got a big 5 with him to help on the rebounds, which obviously Whiteside especially very good at.
Well, when he's on form, he's one of the ones that can occasionally be wandering around the court looking a bit lost and like he's...
Depends if he's played Joel Embiid at ping pong the night before.
Yeah, those hotel antics. We'll see.
Yeah. What about so next thing quickly is games you don't want to see. I'll start this list. I've got 2. The first one, I'll say them both together because of the theme. The first one is the Suns v Wizards, which is a very blanket statement answer. And my next one is Wizards versus anyone. I'm not going to watch one Wizards game. A, probably in my life till I'm very old. B, definitely not in Orlando. So they're my list. What about you?
My first game is Wizards Suns, so let's tackle that behemoth first. They've tried to bury this game. I don't know if you've seen. It's got the same...
It's at the same time as another game, isn't it?
Yeah, Memphis, Portland.
Your game.
My game, exactly. So, they've buried this game deep in the schedule, and for good reason. I feel so sorry for Bradley Beal. He's just going in there underhanded and deserves better than the Wizards. Hopefully they'll regain some momentum next season, but I'm not overly convinced.
No, I don't think they will.
And the Suns are also a bit underhanded, aren't they? They're not going in with the full roster. So it's just going to be a flop. And it's their first game as well. So imagine that rust I was talking about with the Clippers and the Lakers, but with the Wizards and the Suns as well. Devin Booker just
players as well,
putting 60 shots up and 3 of them go in. It's going to be... I've just got this vision in my head of being an absolute mess, and it scares me a little bit. But
It's the Kelly Oubre Bowl,
yeah,
and he's not even going to be there.
exactly, and he's not even there. So
Yeah.
who knows? But my second game
Just
is
quickly before you do your second,
go on.
that game you just said. Let's just sum it up like we said last week. When we think, if we're honest, there should either only be 16 teams or there should be 20 teams. 20 for me. The Suns have a 0% chance of getting the 8 seed by analytics, a
Wow.
0.2% chance of qualification for the playoffs, and the Wizards have a 0% and a 1% chance. So, like we said last week, it's just a joke that they're there, and the fact they're playing each other and they're going to take one of them's going to actually get a win on the board from the other is just not what you want to see.
Yeah, I've got another prediction coming in our last little bit that falls in line with that as well, but we'll get to that.
What's your next game then, mate?
Next game that I don't want to see is Spurs-Houston. As previously stated, I'm not really interested in any Houston games, and with the Spurs missing LaMarcus Aldridge, they've got some great pieces and some young talent that is fantastic. And DeMar DeRozan has his moments. But I'm a massive Patty Mills fan as well. But there's nothing that interests me about this game whatsoever. I can just see it, unfortunately, being a Houston whitewash. And that hurts me deep inside because I love the Spurs and I love Pop. And again, another team where I'm not quite sure why they're there, really. There's no chance I can see them going in, and that upsets me as well because they've got some sort of crazy playoff streak of like 20 years or something, and this will be the year that breaks it if they don't make the playoffs. So, I mean, I feel sorry for them, but that game just does nothing for me.
Well, a mix of styles as well. You're going to have Houston shooting loads of threes, just random 3 after 3 after 3, no ball movement. Or getting a foul, obviously, from Harden, versus just mid-range shots all over the place from the Spurs. DeMar DeRozan, who, if he had a free opportunity for 3, he'd step inside and shoot a contested 2, versus the Rockets. It's just not going to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that interests me about Houston is the fact they've committed to the small ball. That aside, yeah, it doesn't interest me.
Yeah. Well, we spoke about, I think off the air, we spoke about James Harden obviously getting in better shape. And we're going to do a playoff prediction sort of podcast soon. So we won't go into it too much. But on paper, unfortunately for me and you, they are the sort of team that could go on a run. The short amount of time, had a lot of rest, got stars that can just go nuts.
Yeah.
Shoot loads of threes, which is obviously the highest volume way to win if they go in. So yeah, we'll talk about that in the future. But yeah, I think that could be the sort of game that starts them on a good run, potentially. Moving on from the games you don't want to see, go back on a positive note. Well, actually, yeah, we'll go positive first. In your opinion, what teams or team, if you've only got one, has got the best schedule? We'll go through a couple of yours before I tell you mine.
Okay, again, I got 2 here. I've got the Pelicans. I think they've got a fairly nice run in terms of before the season stopped. They had an easy schedule to the end of the season, so I think the league have kind of gone right. Well, let's try our best to sort of replicate that as much as we can.
But they've got the easiest schedule by analytics still. Not as easy as it would have been, but yeah, they have got the easiest strength schedule. They were first on my list as well.
Yeah, so I think they're a definite sort of winner in terms of schedule reshuffling. And then my slight curveball, I think the Bucks have got a nice run simply because it's 8 games. They're 7 games ahead. Who cares if they drop a couple here and there? They could run all sorts of lineups, different experiments, give players rest whenever they feel like it. If they want to turn up for a game, they can turn up for a game. If they want to turn off, they can turn off. So the fact that the league have said 8 regular season games, I feel like the Bucks are absolutely laughing. I mean, they've got some tough games in there, definitely. It's just whether they want to turn up for them or not. Whether that puts them in good stead for the playoffs is up to them and the way they want to play it. But
they can almost build it up, can't they?
Yeah.
In terms of minutes and stuff early on, because
Exactly.
the result doesn't matter as much to them. But then build up towards when the playoffs come to try and almost try and get the rust off. I guess that's probably the best way to say it, isn't it? Just try and get used to playing again and get Giannis's minutes back, but not overrun him. I think that's a good one. That wasn't on my list, which is good.
No, that was
a difference.
It was a slight curveball, but the other thing as well with that, just like as a quick note, we will go into it in more detail at another point in time. But they still haven't sort of nailed anything down in terms of why seeding matters anymore. Apart from you might want to move up or down so you don't play a certain team at a certain time. There's no advantage for those top seeded teams. So, I mean, if the Bucks slide slightly in the East, again, they're not going to care. I can't see them not coming out of the East.
No, definitely. I think you're right in terms of there's nothing. My headphones just got volume just going. Then that's the noise in the background. In terms of the seeding, I think I can't remember what percent it was now. They're crazy high percentage for the number. Oh, they're 100% for the 1 seed, yeah, because the amount of games. And the Raptors are pretty much locked into the 2 seed, so they're almost just like whatever. It's just who we play in the first round. I also think going back to our agreed one, which was the Pelicans. Just as a quick aside, if you just look at it quickly, Kings twice, Magic, Suns. Oh no, sorry. Kings twice, Magic, Spurs without Aldridge, and the Wizards, just as like a brief one. Like, come on, you're talking like easy games and opportunity to win games and get them on the board. So I definitely think you're right with that one. And the only one that I had that you haven't mentioned was the Sixers. They've got really good schedule for them. Their ease of schedule, I believe they're in the East. I think they've got the second easiest left. But obviously, they're one of the better teams. And in terms of who they're playing, their only hard games, I think when I looked, were the Rockets and Raptors. And I believe they might be the last 2 games as well. So you've almost got 6 games to get into your stride, like you said, warm up, get your minutes before you play your 2 hard games. And I think they're going to be a team, like you said, that are jockeying for position and just trying to almost pick off who they want to play. Probably the Celtics, like we spoke to Rich last week. Yeah. Celtics struggle with the Sixers, and I think maybe that's who they might try and line up with.
I think by the time they play Houston as well, Houston will be looking at resting players, so that could be a bit of a walkover potentially for them. I mean, Philly are fairly deep in places. I think the average, when you take into account all their opponents, the average win percentage is below 500 for the 8 games they've got to play in terms of the teams that they are playing, which
that's right.
Again, it goes back to our point. You've taken the top, inverted commas, top 22 teams. Well, how are you still averaging out at below 500 over 8 games? So it makes no sense to me in that light. But yeah, Sixers are probably rubbing their hands together and looking at the Eastern Conference going, well, what's going to be our easiest way to that final?
Yeah, they just want to get to that Bucks game and see what happens, and also not overrun Embiid in those 8 games, I imagine.
Yes, he's got a history of either injuring himself or tiring himself out, hasn't he? So
yeah, they can use that easy schedule to help build that up, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've picked out some nice schedules there.
Mm-hmm. How about the other end of the scale? So we've gone from best schedules there, three good ones. Worst schedule. Why don't you go with your 2 first and see what they are, and we'll see if we've got any of the same.
I've gone, my main one is Portland.
Same as me.
Tough schedule for them, and to be fighting for that playoff berth, they're going to have to put everything into these 8 games, as well as then look forward onto playing through the playoffs and pushing through. Like we said, they may have lost one player, but they've had a couple come back from injury. They've got slightly deeper lineup. I still think, well, they're definitely going to miss Trevor Ariza. And believe it or not, well, before he got injured, Rodney Hood was a huge part of their team and great, playing super, super well for them. And I think they've missed him all season. And they're definitely going to miss him now, having that rotation and that depth. And I don't know, yeah, looking at their opposition. So, like I said, their first game is Memphis, which is a huge game for them. They really need to put that marker down. Then Boston.
Yeah, no time to warm up, I was going to say, in those first two games. You're straight in with it, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Boston are a deep team. They're going to run you ragged. They're going to throw players at you left, right, and centre. That's going to be super, super tough. Then Houston, which they've obviously got a sort of a deep-seated rivalry with at the moment, so they're going to want to put something into that game, aren't they? Denver, tough game. Who have we got next? Yeah, they've got a hell
They've
of a
got the Clippers as well.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's difficult. They're on my list, top of my list as well. They're actually quite obviously top of the list as well. You know, in terms of when you look at it, they're the standout candidate for worst schedule. They have officially got the worst schedule as well. In terms of, like I said, when I was looking at the analytic numbers, they have got the worst schedule, just like your eyes tell you, really.
Yeah. Who else have you got then?
It was tough for my second one. I've got Nuggets because they've got Lakers and Clippers.
Yeah.
Which are key for them because they want to test themselves in terms of because their aim is obviously a Western Conference final at minimum. But also they've got the Jazz and Miami, who they struggle with in general in previous meetings, and the Jazz are obviously the one that's trying to almost get up to that to take their third seed along with Houston. So I think in terms of playoff seeding, the Nuggets could be at a disadvantage because you've got 4 tough games there. I know you play 8 games. But there's a couple of others, including my team, the Mavs, who Doncic does play well against the Nuggets. But just in terms of top 4, having the Lakers, Clippers, Jazz, and Heat in 4 of your first 6, like that's tough, really, really tough. And they do not want to swap that dip and have to play mainly the Lakers because they struggle so much with the Lakers. They don't want to play them early in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So I put them on my list. And also you've got the fact that Jokic has lost a lot of weight. He's also got the virus. You don't know how he's going to come back. So if they have a slow start, that seeding could dramatically change, which obviously they're not going to want. What about you?
They were struggling a little bit towards the end of the season as well in terms of consistency and their wins. It was to look at their last couple of results: a loss against the Mavericks, a win against the Bucks.
Well, they're only 3 games up on the 7th seed, who is Dallas for now, for example. So just say you lose those 4 games I mentioned, or 3 of the 4. And then you have to go into the game with Dallas if they're on a good run, for example. That could be a real big struggle. Imagine going from the 3rd seed to the 7th. That's just such a huge difference in terms of playoff basketball. I know there's no home court, so it is different. But just in terms of who you play, you'll be going from playing the Rockets or Thunder or maybe Dallas to then definitely playing the Clippers, which is just like, that's so tough. And like you said, they could also implement some sort of home court advantage idea. That's not been confirmed either way, like you said. So we could actually get that. So if they've slipped to the 7th and the NBA have announced some sort of, I don't know, tip-off or points or more fouls or something, you kind of need all the edge you can get. So I think the Nuggets could be in trouble.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've basically got the same as you there. The only one I could think of is not massively schedule, but also team coming together, be Utah. They've got some tough games in there, but they've got a couple of easier games here and there. But just in terms of they've been struggling up and down all season, and with obviously the friction off the court that they've had, these 8 games could really make or break them. They could, going into the playoffs. So I want to keep a little eye on them and see how they truck along during these 8 games.
They're a prime candidate again for playoff seeding in terms of it being so important to them. But they're only 1 game up from 7, for example, and they're only 3 games off from 2nd.
It's a crazy Western Conference, isn't it? So tight.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. But it's interesting for us, and it makes the fact that it's 8 games almost worthwhile. Because imagine if the gap was so big in certain areas that there was almost like only two teams jockeying for positions. In fact, we've got almost every team apart from the Lakers jockeying for position in the playoffs, and you've got Grizzlies who could obviously they're fighting to stay in the playoffs. I think it makes the West pretty cool to watch for those 8 games.
Yeah, it makes it super interesting, especially like we said, if they do bring in some sort of advantage for top seeds. But for now, they're going to be playing for opponents, essentially, aren't they? If we win these amount of games, we can move up to here, which means we might potentially play this team.
Or avoid this team, yeah.
Or avoid, exactly. So that's got to be their motivation, hasn't it?
Yeah, and almost play themselves into a bit of playoff form as well, to be fair.
Yes, definitely. Warm-up games.
Cool. Well, that's our version on worst schedules. When we do our playoff prediction, we're almost gonna map out some of these a little bit more. We haven't fully decided what we're going to do yet, but one idea is we could run from 1 to 8 in both conferences. So, for example, the Bucks are already the 1 seed. The Lakers will be the 1 seed. So we'll be talking about them very little because we know they're going to be the 1 seed. But then when we get into our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, etc., we're going to have some differences. So we're going to go into a little bit more depth when we do that podcast. Which sounds good, Ben, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if the listeners want to tweet at us and then get involved, then please go ahead. Let us know what you think the conferences are going to look like at the end of these 8 games.
Yeah, I think we could run some sort of polls. That might be the plan. We're eventually going to try and speak to a load of playoff team fans. But yeah, we can run some polls and we'll get some questions out to the listeners to see what they think. But before we do that major prediction podcast, let's end this episode on a little bit of a prediction. We'll go with one crazy bet or prediction you've got for the remaining 8 games. I'll start us off just because I've got kind of 2. It's more like 1.5.
Yeah,
it's not a crazy prediction as such, but I really, really fancy, this is biased, the Mavs to finish as a 4 or 5 seed at worst. Because they've got the Suns twice and the Kings. And they've also got their biggest rivals in terms of Doncic wants to win a title. They're not going to be anywhere near favourites. I believe they're like 9th favourite for the title. So obviously they're nowhere near up there. But they've got Clippers, Rockets and Bucks. And they've already had 2 amazing games with the Lakers. So I think just in terms of how important it'll be for them for the 8 games to gear up to the playoffs, I think so important. I could see them finishing the 4th seed. But that's less of a crazy one, more of a biased one. In terms of crazy one, I think the Nuggets will go 1-7 or 2-6, and they will fall in seeding to the 6th or 7th seed. That's my big one. I don't think Jokic is going to be the same player weighing less. I think he'll be better actually over time, but not when you're used to playing the way you play, and then you come back all of a sudden at a different weight level. I think that's going to be slightly problematic in terms of the way he plays.
Commit to one. Which one? 1-7 or 2-6?
Let's have a look. So they've got Clippers, Lakers, Heat, OKC, Spurs, Blazers, Raptors, Jazz. So I think they will win against the Spurs for sure.
Yeah.
Chris Paul. I think there might be either OKC or Portland. So I'll go. They're going to go 2-6, and that'll be enough for them to probably finish in the 6th seed instead of the 3rd. But that's a big drop off.
It's huge, yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to go. They're going to go 2-6, and they're going to lose. The only games they'll win are. Let's go precise. They're going to beat the Blazers, and they're going to beat the Spurs. That's it.
Okay, well, my first prediction is very similar to that, but it's from the Eastern Conference.
No, I like it. What have we got?
The Wizards are going 0-8. 0 wins. Goose egg. Absolutely nothing from these 8 games, and they go home with their tail between their legs. I just cannot see it happening whatsoever unless a team is really rusty or has fallen asleep in the 3rd quarter and Bradley Beal does something outrageous or one of his teammates catches fire. Because they did go through that bit of a phase where they were just plugging people into their lineup and they were just catching on fire and scoring outrageous numbers. I just
crazy
can't see
3-point shooting, I think.
Yeah, I just can't see that happening again. And I can't see it happening over this sustained amount of time after such a big break and having them play with their lineups again. That's my first prediction. The Wizards win nothing.
I would tend to agree. I think their only chance is the Suns game that we both won't be watching. So I think they're either going to win one or none, and I think that's a good shout. But that's a good shout. What's your second? Have you got another one, or is that it?
Yeah. So second prediction is nothing to do with teams, wins or losses, but it's to do with the production. So I think the NBA and Adam Silver have come out and said they're going to try some things we've not seen before, whether that's camera angles, fan interaction, whatever it may be. And I think there will be some epic fails and some things they will try and bury very quickly. I also think there'll be one or two things that roll over and they use next season for the
things that actually work and
exactly
add a bit to the game maybe.
One of the things I heard they're going to try is a tap to cheer app. So I don't know whether this is going to be paid for or free. You tap the app to support an X team, and a seat or a light lights up in the colour of that team you voted for, just to bring a bit more atmosphere to it. I did hear someone say that it could potentially be hacked though, and you just have the whole stadium going up in crazy colours. But equally, I'd quite like to see that. So those are my two predictions. The Wizards go 0-8, and the NBA tries something new that turns out to be absolutely incredible, and we use it next season.
Cool, that's cool. I have read somewhere that I think we did speak about it. Sorry, in the Last Dance pod. I told you the crazy film-like angles they had of that game, the final game in Jordan's career, and then they re-aired it on ESPN. I think I mentioned.
Yes, you did. Yeah,
and they did the whole thing like that. So rather than the overcourt view of end to end, there was a lot of backcourt shots and a lot of UHD cameras from the side. Apparently, they're going to try and offer a camera angle, at least on the ESPN games, because they did it for the Last Dance. They're going to offer a camera angle that's like that, so you're almost like watching the Last Dance style, which basically looks like a movie. One of the things was that, which is quite cool. That could change your viewing experience, especially on replays. If they add some of those shots in for replays, you could watch the game normally, and then add a really cool replay shot of a 3 from, I don't know, a Damian Lillard 40-footer or something. I think that can be quite a cool thing that they can trial out.
Yeah, definitely. No, that sounds great. And again, something else I'd love to hear from the listeners. Have you got any outrageous or crazy predictions that you want to voice or air? Tweet at us. Or if you've actually seen some actual bets that people have put out there that you can have a little flutter on, let us know. We love to hear about things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a very keen bettor, which everyone will get to know. And I think when the games come back, we're going to do a bet of the week or odds of the week, or in our preview pod as well. I think we're going to do a little betting section so we can offer people some good odds. That'd be quite cool. We can have a look at that.
Definitely. Sounds great to me.
Cool, sweet. Well, we'll wrap it up there then. We wanted to do 45 minutes, but it's going to be an hour and 10-minute podcast again. So typical us. We just want to thank everyone again for listening, and just once again, we're going to have another pod this week, later in the week, about a top 10 player draft. So completely different from Orlando stuff, which we always talk about. There's no news, nothing, just a special pod based on that. And then next week we're going to go into the Delete 8. Which is the 8 teams being left at home, with really in-depth conversation on those teams, which will help, obviously, all the fans that have been listening to all these podcasts, and we don't talk about their team ever, unless we take the mick out of me supporting the Knicks when I was younger, something like that. And then the week after, we've got an exciting interview with our friend Joel, who's an absolute sneakerhead, isn't he? We're going to get that in as well, which is another thing, a little bit different to the Orlando, to the bubble, just to get everyone a bit more enthused about another area of basketball. So some good episodes planned there, Ben.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to all of these. I think we've got some good content coming up.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to try and offer a tweet out for a subject for a whole episode. We've got a week not planned at all so far, before the games come back. So we're going to try and offer it out, and maybe we can just talk about some random topics that you guys want us to talk about. So yeah, that'll be good. But yeah, thanks everyone again for listening. Remember to follow us at @_Hardwood Hoops. The podcast again is sponsored by @Mugs NFL. Use our name if you want to get 10% off any orders from them. They're going to stay a podcast sponsor for a while, and they're actually going to probably do a giveaway with us. Hopefully, I've got to talk to them about that tomorrow. So yeah, thanks for listening. We'll speak to you next week. Cheers, mate.
Bye.